Like I said, I'm going to edit the beginning of it out anyway. Let's see. I think it's a pretty good thing. And we'll go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we are on. So what's been going on, man? How's the Marine doing?
Oh, he's doing good. As we discussed earlier, he's been shifted over. I guess it's called the MOS.
Yep.
His MOS was shifted to 0352. He should be getting his orders this week.
Okay.
0352, for those of you who don't have the background, and I'm learning this as my son sort of informs me and Pippin here educates me, is heavy weapons. So we discussed earlier there are possibilities. He doesn't know. He's getting his orders this week, going to fleet.
Yeah.
As far as he knows, the way they're grouping them is alphabetically. So he's going to be with a group of guys that have A, B, C, D, E, F, G last names.
Right.
And it looks like they're taking about 30 at a time. He talked to somebody in another in Alpha company. They got their orders and they said, hey, they're taking them alphabetically.
Yeah.
And then it just depends on which place
he goes.
He goes. And the 3 possibilities, as far as he knows, are Hawaii, Camp Pendleton, or 29 Palms.
Oh.
Yes.
Good God.
He says he thinks it's least likely that he will stay at Camp Pendleton.
So there's absolutely no chance they're going to East Coast.
Right.
That's good news.
As far as he's been told, informed, and he has at this point, he has no reason to believe. Like when he was at Boot, a lot of times he had reason to believe that what he was being told by superiors was not necessarily the truth, or they were just deliberately vague, or they were like,
so
you know. And then, but he found out after he got out of Boot that the reason that is that the platoon he was in was supervised by a bunch of guys who did not want to be there because something had happened in that platoon.
The drill instructors.
Exactly.
The drill instructors.
The DIs did not want to be there. They had been pulled from other assignments and told, this is what you're going to do. And so it took them a long time to figure that out, but they figured it out like basically after graduate, like the week of graduation.
That is something they should have never been able to figure out. That shows you some serious unprofessionalism at the recruit depot for them to, the image of the drill instructor on the recruit depot. There should absolutely be it should be able to tell if these are the best or these are the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the most elite as far as training wise.
Yeah.
It's the most elite cadre. They're supposed to be the most, they look the best. These are guys that, change their shirts when they start sweating a little so no one sees sweat.
Yeah.
It's really disturbs me that they were even able to figure that out.
Well,
that was that bad.
And I don't want to badmouth the DIs. Like, it wasn't like my son was complaining the whole time he was there, because there are a couple of things. First of all, you are plunged into a new culture and a new paradigm that you know nothing about.
Right.
You might have tried to figure things out before you went, but when you get there, you don't know any better than what you're being shown.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't like he was complaining the whole time. Like, he was jazzed the whole time.
Yeah.
He did, but toward the end, he said there were a couple of incidents, for instance, where a DI from a different platoon came walking through, or a sergeant, master sergeant, I don't know all the ranks, came through, and somebody asked him a question about, hey, and this is like 2 weeks, right? This is after the crucible, or a week.
Yeah.
After the crucible. Hey, what about this? And the guy literally stood there for 10 minutes and explained in detail what they should expect.
Yeah.
And it was so different than they're asking their own DIs the same questions.
Right.
So for instance, they had posted a schedule for recon testing, right?
Yeah.
Testing for recon. And up until the day before, nobody had said that's completely off. And my son,
you're talking about in MOS school now, not boot camp.
This is at boot. And
they were doing recon screening at boot camp.
Yeah, they had it posted like it's going to be on this day. I don't know if you remember, but Liam was up until the Thursday before that Friday. He's like, yeah, tomorrow I'm testing for recon, and then that day.
But that wasn't boot camp though. That was infantry training battalion. Right?
Or yeah, it must have been.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. You're right. It was when he got to ITV.
Right. Yeah.
So but then like the day before it was supposed to happen, and it was on the board They're like, oh yeah, that's all scrubbed. That's all canceled.
Yeah.
And so, but he had to ask about it like 3 times, to the point where other people in his platoon were like groaning at him when he's like, I hate to harp on this, but
Yeah.
you know, but like at the end, because of that experience they had, and maybe they found out right after they got to ITB, but the impression that Liam had was that something had happened and a bunch of DIs had been removed, and then a collection of them were put together, you know what I mean, to head. And he was in a platoon that got sort of added later. He's in 2147.
Right.
And there was no 2146, I noticed, in the graduation announcement.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's odd. And then I found out that because when Liam and his recruits, when they flew out of Little Rock, there was bad weather in Dallas. They ended up missing a flight, right?
Yeah.
And so they got to Recruit Depot a day late. That also might have explained. You know what I mean? He said, found out that his platoon was just made up of ragtags put together. You know, you were supposed to be here. You know, my buddy John, who's a former Marine too, he poked at me on Facebook, said, oh, poor Liam, he must have showed up a day late or something because he ended up in 2nd Battalion, not in 1st Battalion, and he was 1st Battalion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know what all that means, but
well, it
you know, the long and the short of it is
not much really.
He's happy as a clam right now, and he can't wait. I told him to listen to our podcast where you discuss the differences between being part of a heavy weapons company as opposed to being. How did you put it? If he gets it, he might be assigned to a platoon and then be
the way it works is 0352 like you said, it's MOS. It's a military occupational specialty, and that is for a job, not for. It doesn't really determine whether he's in heavy weapons or weapons or whatever. It's just his physical job. So what he was trained for as an 0352, and going back in my day, I don't know what's changed in it, is going to be essentially as an assaultman, which is a rocket guy.
Right.
Okay, it's a rocket marine. It can be a shoulder fired missile, a rocket, or it can be something that's crew served, which would, you know, the if you're firing a javelin, things like that, that would be essentially on a vehicle. Or mounted onto a vehicle,
right.
and that's the difference in heavy weapons or the weapons. But he was essentially trained on all of it. So when he gets to the fleet as an 0352, he's going to go to an infantry regiment, okay? And in that infantry regiment, he'll be assigned a battalion. And when he goes, so, you know, each battalion is going to have 1st, 2nd, or 3rd, you know, whatever infantry regiment you're with. And like on the East Coast, you know, you have 2nd Marine Regiment. It's all 2nd Marine Division. A lot of people get this confused because this is how I catch dudes that are kind of full of shit on you know, because they'll refer to, they'll get designators wrong. Right. When you hear someone say 2nd Marines, they're not talking about 2nd Marine Division. Generally, a Marine will call that 2 Mardiv or 2nd Mardiv. Right. When they say 2nd Marines, it's the same as when you hear them say 6th Marines or 8th Marines. That's a regiment. They're talking about a regiment. Like, you know, the Rangers will call it, you know, Ranger Regiment. They'll call it 75th, okay? Because they have one regiment for the Rangers, okay? The Marine Corps infantry battalions, you know, are set up similar. And the way, so you get to a regiment and it'll be, so I was with 2nd Marines. Right. So let's just say he goes to 2nd Marine Regiment. He's in 2nd Marine Division, which is the infantry division of the, you know, of the East Coast, of the entire division, or the entire what am I trying to say? So it's the infantry division. Okay, you've got other units there, right, besides the infantry division, but that's it. That's the infantry division. So he goes there. He gets assigned to 2nd Marine Regiment. Then he'll go to a battalion, 1st, 2nd, or 3rd. It's that simple, right? Let's just say he followed my footsteps. He goes to 2nd Battalion, or 3rd Battalion. I'm sorry, it's 3rd Battalion, 2nd Marines. That's what that means. Okay. So I was with 3rd Battalion, 2nd Marines. Right. Obviously, I'm in 2nd Marine Division because I'm on the East Coast. Right. All right.
You were on the East Coast.
Right.
Okay.
Now I went to training on the West Coast, but then they took all of us and sent us to the East Coast. So I went to the same boot camp he went to. Was in the same platoon he was in. Actually graduated. Went to ITB just like him. Did all that stuff except for I was an 0311 instead of an 0352. Right. But then they moved all of us, our entire class, to the East Coast because there had been a rotational issue with the East Coast. The time I was in, they called them MUSOCs. Now they're just called MUs. The advent of special operations, the formal special operations divisions kind of replaced the MUSOC, I think they took the SOC designator away from it. But the whole idea is to work up to a MUSOC, which was a Marine Expeditionary Unit. At the time, there was a special designator, special operations capable. And what that meant is that Marine Expeditionary Unit was amphibious, capable of doing certain types of missions that would be non-conventional. All right, not special operations in the sense that we think of it today, but it could do anything from humanitarian to rescuing down pilots, to reconnaissance operations, to yes, there was a maritime special purpose force that consisted of a SEAL team and a recon platoon and things like that. But I'm getting ahead of all that's, you worked up to that. When I left infantry training battalion.
And what year was this for
1999.
you? 1999. Okay.
So whenever I left the West Coast from infantry training battalion, I was hoping to go to California. That's the whole reason I enlisted. I wanted Southern California. I mean, I wanted to get out of Arkansas. I wanted to go to the Marine Corps. I wanted to be in Southern California. Like, that's where I wanted to be and I didn't want anything to do with pine trees. And essentially anyone that's served in Jacksonville, North Carolina at Camp Lejeune knows it's essentially, if you've ever been to Arkansas, it's essentially the same thing with an ocean.
Right.
All right. It's that the East Coast, not all of North Carolina, but the East Coast, it's flat, pine trees everywhere, same climate,
swampy.
Everything's the same except for there's a beach.
Yeah.
All right. But so if he goes to second, if he was to follow my footsteps, he would go to 2nd Marine Division, 2nd Marine Regiment, and he would go to 3rd Battalion. And so in that battalion, you're going to have companies.
Right.
All right. So the companies are going to be broken into, rifle companies, infantry companies, and then, a headquarters company.
That was the term I forgot. Headquarters
company, and then a weapons company. Now, so he could at that point go to weapons company, and and if he went to weapons company as an 0352, then like I said, unless Laverty, if you're watching this, correct me, dude, you're 0352. But if he goes to weapons company, he's essentially going to be in a CAT platoon, which is anti-armor, a unit that fires the big missiles and stuff, and they do other things too. But that's where he would go. Now, if he goes to a rifle company, and what they do is those companies are broken up into a big mortar section, big machine guns, big rockets. Think of it like that, right? And they support the companies. Right. All right. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we would have a big mortar attachment to Kilo Company, a big machine guns to Kilo Company, possibly, depending on the mission.
Right.
And etc. If he goes to a rifle company, which is what I was in, what I started out in, then you have a similar breakdown. You have a headquarters platoon, a weapons platoon, and then you have rifle platoons, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd rifle platoon, right? If he goes to a rifle company, then he would go to weapons platoon, and he would be probably, unless something's changed, I always throw that out there because shit changes, and I don't even know if I'd recognize the Marine Corps anymore, but he would be essentially a shoulder-fired missile man, or rocket man, whatever you want to call it, Marine, and gender political correct bullshit. But that's what he would go to, and that's where he would be. So when a rifle squad from that platoon, when a rifle platoon's operating, they might, depending on their mission, get an assault detachment, or an attachment, not a detachment. They get an assault attachment, maybe machine gun attachment. Mortars, maybe most of the time they kind of hang together because they got a separate mission. Right. But that's what that's kind of the experience that he would have. But yeah, we got screwed. So I wanted to go to Southern California, and we ended up on the East Coast. And
well, I'm assuming that he'll probably get screwed too and end up at 29 Palms. But fingers crossed.
That's the only thing worse than Camp Lejeune's not bad. There's stuff to do. If he was to go to the East Coast, it would be way better than 29 Palms. Mm-hmm. Camp Lejeune's like kind of out in the middle of anything. There's nothing in Jacksonville, North Carolina. I want to go back. I still got friends that live there. Chad, if you're watching this, Laverty's still out there, I believe, unless you've moved. I'll have to look at your Facebook thing. You're still on the East Coast, right, Lav? I believe so. But I do have friends out there, and I've always wanted to go back and see how Jacksonville has changed. It would actually be really emotional for me, I think, because it's been so long since I've been there. Yeah. And the memories would be so, potent. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like
intense.
You know what I'm talking about? You go to some places, and it's just like, even if you didn't like it when you were there, it's because it's in the past and the memory is so strong, and you get there and it's emotional. Because you're like, man, I love this part of my life. It's a chapter that you just miss so much. And I think if I went there and it would be emotional for me to go, and that's not even going on base, just going out in town.
Well, two, it's revisiting a place where your life in one sense was just completely transformed. So
100%. Yeah.
I had the same experience when I went back to Baton Rouge after I'd been principal of that little school, and I kind of got I got submarined, right? So I got this $10 million piece of land, not by myself, but we secured it. We didn't get it for free. We were paying for it, right?
Yeah.
And we were getting to the point where we were ready to start. So I had a developer come to me and say, hey, this is what I can do for you.
Yeah.
If you will sell me an acre and a half on the property that you're paying for,
right,
I will build your school for you, and you can rent it from me at a price that you can afford until such a time as you can buy it back.
Right.
So that way I can help you. That was sort of the beginning of the end for me, because when I took that to the board, they got really suspicious that me and this guy were trying to take over the school. And we're like, who wants to own a Catholic? No, we're just trying to help you. So
I remember this story.
Okay,
now.
so
that was really messed up.
It was really messed up, but I left, right?
Yeah.
And then I had an opportunity to travel back down to New Orleans and Baton Rouge for a conference. And I ended up going to Baton Rouge, and my buddy Jeff and I drove out to where the school was. And guess what they did? Exactly what I'd advised them to do with the same guy.
Wow.
So I'm standing in the parking lot of that school that I had never seen, but that I'd worked my ass off to build.
Yeah.
And the level of emotion that I was overwhelmed by in that moment completely surprised and actually embarrassed me. Because I'm standing there with my buddy, and then all of a sudden I started to cry. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't know where the hell that came from. And he's like, no, man, you do what you have to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I had all these pent up, I had to decompress for years after all of this happened. So yeah, I totally understand, how something like that would be. It probably would be, even though you're expecting it. It's still going to happen.
I haven't went back sometimes when I've had opportunities for that very reason, because my life was so different then. It was, and it was the biggest part of my life as far as the things that I remember the most. There's a lot of parts of my life I don't remember much about boot camp.
Yeah.
I was always fascinated by the guys when I was in the Marine Corps that remembered every detail of boot camp.
Yeah.
And I never understood why I forgot so much. Like, I didn't really care. And I think a lot of it was because it wasn't my initial basic training.
Right. You'd already been through.
I'd already been through the Army
Guard
version.
and the Army version.
Well, no, the Guard, it's the same. The Guard is the Army version.
Okay.
You go to Army boot camp.
Right.
But I'd already been to Army boot camp, and that was my, don't get me wrong, Marine Corps boot camp was much more of a wake up as far as here. But the point is that I already had my...
Yeah, and you've said actually to me that Army boot camp is physically more demanding.
It on the initial...
In many ways.
A lot of... Physically, right off the bat, it was harder.
Yeah.
Okay? But the Marine Corps was, if you ask me which one was harder...
Ultimately,
Ultimately, it's not even a comparison. If I had to go back through one of them, Marine Corps would be... I would just shoot myself before if I had to go back through comparatively the two. I'd go through Army boot camp. My experience Army boot camp a long time ago over what I experienced in the Marine Corps. It was way worse. On so many levels. That's when I learned that it doesn't have to be as physically hard to be more miserable. It's way more miserable. And it was extremely physically challenging, but at the time I went through Marine boot camp, I don't know if it changed, if they had it down to a science, the progression was better, and I still broke my legs. With stress fractures.
Right.
But the point is that I didn't, I didn't remember much about boot camp. I couldn't tell you, I can't tell you all of my drill instructors' original names. That's something that's no one believes.
That makes sense to me, because one of the things Liam and I talked about when we did get a chance to talk while I was at Recruit Depot was there's a certain mindset that you have to get into. And by the way, I have to thank you, because I repeated something to him that you told me, right? Which was, you said, the guys that don't make it, it's not because necessarily they're not physically able to do it, although that sometimes happens.
Yeah.
But it's the ones that aren't focused in the right way on the right things.
Yeah.
And so, and you talked about, being too long range.
Yes. And that goes with a lot of stuff.
And that probably has to do with why your memory of boot is the way it is, because you tapped into that mindset. And this is what I told Liam he needed to do too. I said, what you need to do is you need to just be looking at I likened it to my long distance running. I was a long distance runner when I was a kid, up until I was about a sophomore in high school when I switched to tennis. And I was a bad runner, but I could run all day long.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a bad racer, you know what I mean? I couldn't win a race to save my life. I didn't have very good times. You know, I cracked a 7-minute mile in a race maybe twice. You know what I mean? Fastest ones was like 6.5 minutes. On a track, I broke a 6-minute mile once when I was a freshman in college. But otherwise, what I would do, and I told him, I said, what I would do when I ran, and I'm talking about when I would run 15 miles, when I'd run 20 miles, because I was gearing up for a marathon, is, I would just look up the road and pick a spot.
Yeah, and just get
I'm just running to that spot.
Yeah.
And then once I got there, I'd look up again, I'd find another spot to run to.
Yeah.
And so I kind of said, you got to treat boot like that. Just
everything like that.
Just look at the next thing that you've got to accomplish and only focus on that. And once that's done, you can look up and see, well, what's the next thing? And the other attitude that he adopted, which I thought was really, really healthy, was he realized about halfway through that the motivation that he thought he was going to get from the DIs was not going to come from the DIs, it had to come from himself.
Right. Yeah.
And
if it's coming from the DIs, you're not doing very well.
And that's what he realized.
Yeah.
He said the ones that they're on all the times are the ones that aren't making it. He said, but those of us who are passing all the tests, we're ringing the bell at the top of the rope. We're jumping over we're never having any trouble with anything. He said they just ignore us. And that frustrated him for a few weeks, but then he said, no, I realized. You know what I mean? I realized.
Yeah.
So there was this one DI that was on me from day one, actually knew my name.
Yeah.
Took him several weeks to realize, wait a minute, that guy saw something in me, and that's why he's being the way he is toward me, and he's actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
By the end.
And that's important. Yeah.
So again, I think I've told my family, I've told my friends, he made exactly the right choice for him in what branch he was going to join. I mean, he's flourished, and his sense of humor.
It's come out, right?
Oh my gosh!
It's going to get. Let me tell you something. It's going to get way better.
Yeah.
And
the thing that I wince at, excuse me for interrupting, is when he does call. We'll put him on speakerphone or I'll hand him off to his mom, and he doesn't. He talks like a Marine to his mom. It doesn't faze her at all, but sometimes it makes me say, hey, you might want to. But he'll be like, fuck.
Yeah, you might want to drop the humor.
Watch the language, watch the language. But, he sounds so happy and so good. So, I couldn't be more pleased.
And that's the point about looking, I got to where I can't stand people. Strategy is a big deal in life, and and I know that you have to have your mind on big pictures in life, and you have to have plans and things like that. And I used to be just a planning freak, and that was but I learned real quick in these areas that the big picture as far as an idea in your head, as far as a goal, that's good to have. But if when it comes to things like this, what he's in, whether it's boot camp, whether it's anything else he may do after that, any other challenging course he may go through, just in Marine Corps day to day, not even just in courses, just in day to day sometimes when it sucks, being in the field.
Yeah.
One of my first memorable experiences in the field of the Marine Corps, I remember 2 early on field ops, training wise. Obviously this is years before the war started. But my first one that I went out to the field, our first field op in the fleet, was very scary. Number one, we were hiking 20 miles out there, which we had done in Camp Pendleton, up mountains and stuff. This was flat surface, so it wouldn't have been. But I didn't know. I mean, these were seasoned guys. How fast were they going to be going? What was how different was this going to be the way they did it? And then we're going out there and we're going to be in the field for several days, and then we're going to come out. And it was just real intimidating because these guys are watching you, and they're like, I mean, these aren't instructors. Yeah. These are your peers now. Yeah. They're your leaders. I remember that. And then I remember being intimidated, but the worst one I remember is later on, first deployment, training deployment, and that was to Okinawa. And I remember doing a jungle warfare training package, and it just would not stop raining.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I cannot explain to you how miserable that is when it's raining that hard, that long, nonstop.
Yeah.
And you're training. You're moving up cliffs, and it's the most demoralizing thing ever. moving through it taught me a lot.
Yeah.
Because you're moving through this really, really rough terrain. You're sliding down stuff. You've got to be careful. You're going to fall off this. We had a guy fall off a cliff.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a short cliff. He was okay, but we had to carry him out of there.
Yeah.
Terry Ballard knows what I'm talking about. If you're watching this, Terry, that was a miserable experience. What was his name? It was one of your peers. Terry Ballard was one of my first squad leaders. That's how we know each other.
Okay.
We made each other. But anyway, it's all about that keeping, looking at today, trying to get to lunch, and you'll hear that over and over from a lot of guys, from Marines to SEALs to Rangers, to getting through things. The guys that are super analytical about life, they don't make it a lot of times, because if they can't focus on, the guys they're trying to plan an operation, you're going, dude, we got to get this log over there. You're worried about how we're gonna conquer this entire evolution in the next 12 hours. Right now, you need to pick up your end of the log.
Well, obviously that's what they've been concentrating on since they did the split. He went 0352 because he was laughing about it. He said one of the things they have to do is they have to carry all the stuff. They got to carry all the weapons.
Oh yeah,
all
congratulations! They're in the heavy boys club
every day. Yeah. And he goes and he said we're all terrible at it. You're doing shuffle steps. You're sideways. And he goes, me and Barnett, we always team up. We always grab one of the heavier things. Because we can do it, and it's not that other guys can't do it, but then there are other guys that just can't do it, and you'll hear people literally crying. He said crying while we're doing this, and all we got to do is move it a half a mile or whatever it is from here to there, and then we set it up. He said, but we just laugh about it because it's, one, it sucks.
Yeah.
Two, we're having to learn that, and then
he's found the magic key. Then laughter and misery will carry him all the way.
And so he and his friend Barnett has the same attitude, and
they'll go forward then.
So funny story he told me. Speaking of Marine humor, so he noticed a week and a half ago that a guy was on his phone in the middle of the week. So immediately he thinks to himself, "Oh, geez, I wonder what happened with this guy that he's on the phone.
Emergency or something."
Exactly. Right. And so he turned to Barnett and said, "Hey, what's going on with this guy?" He goes, "Yeah, his grandfather just died, and he's on the phone. They gave him his phone so he can make arrangements to go back and see his family." And from behind them, about 4 feet away, one of their other buddies, Grant, goes, "I wish my grandpa would die."
Seriously, that's and if that made you cringe, you're on the wrong channel, because that's real. That is real.
Yeah. So I was like, that sounds like you're in your element. But so they do the 5,000 meter hike, they do the 10,000 meter hike, they do the 15,000 meter hike, and then they do the 20,000 meter hike. And they just did the 20,000 last week.
Okay.
And he said, "Oh my gosh," he said,
they're calling them meter hikes now.
Yeah,
we just went with miles. I didn't know that.
No, it's 20,000 meters.
They've changed stuff. I've never heard any.
So when he did land nav, everything was in meters.
Well, we do it in meters, but it's like I've never heard a hike called in meters.
Right. Maybe it was miles. Maybe I'm just confusing
the
two.
It wouldn't be 15,000 miles. I guarantee you that.
No.
You're probably right. The terminology changes.
So 5,000 meters is 3.1 miles.
Yeah.
So you got a 3 mile hike plus
I've never
a little
heard
bit,
it. Yeah.
6.2, 9.4, and then about 15 or so.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's right.
And so they were on that last hike, and they have, of course, they're 0352, so they got to carry their equipment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he said, so they switch off, you know what I mean? They grab the heavier stuff, but that way you can sort of tap out and get a rest and just hike with your stuff. And he said, some of the machine gunners, they're not making it, and they're thinking with the machine guns, it'll be easier because I won't have to switch off with anybody, but over that length of time. But he said toward the end, of course, with land nav, which he loved, Liam knows how far he's walked because he knows how wide his paces are. And if he keeps a rough count, he knows.
Oh, good.
He said so. We got toward the end, and we're like, all right, we're just about done, And they're like, yeah, it's over this hill, and then down the hill, and then and he goes, we're coming down. They're like, and then they didn't let us stop, and they told us, no, we gotta do the go here first. So they do another whatever it was, and he goes, at this point we know we have done more than 20,000. 20,000.
Is it 20? Call it clicks?
Kilometers. Maybe it's clicks,
yeah, okay,
whatever.
that makes sense.
But
we did call it that.
Now they're over. They're over the amount they were told that they were going to be doing.
Click,
right, and
15K, whatever.
So then they're coming back around again, and they're like, all right, now we can see it. We got down there. You go to the left. That's home.
Yeah.
Right. We got down there. He's like, sure, shoot. And they told us to take a right. We're like, oh no, And he said, he said, I was even get to the point where I was so gassed, I thought, man, I'm not sure I can make it, because
Right.
there was no, talking about the way you put a goal in sight. Like when I ran, I look at a point and that's where I'm going.
Yeah.
Well, here's what the guys were doing. And he said, then when I thought about it, our sergeant had told us, he told us a story before the hike about, you know, something that happened on a deployment with a platoon where they thought X and then it turned out to be. And that's kind of what I said to him. I said, well, what they just illustrated is that 20 clicks in a war zone doesn't end up being 20 clicks all the time. It ends up being 45 or whatever. Or maybe it rains the whole time you're trying to do what you're doing, and that doesn't take away from what your mission is.
Right.
And so you just have to adapt
And overcome.
That's
right.
And so he ultimately, again, he's telling these stories about how miserable it is, and he's at the, it's over. He's laughing about them now.
Yeah.
You know, immediately.
Misery brings the greatest memories, and it's the best times. I remember hating so many days, like hating, just absolutely hating. I never remember ever once going. You say things like, "Man, I wish I was out of the Marine Corps."
Yeah,
but I don't remember one time when if you know, I was really wanted to be until the end. After 8 years, you know.
Then you were ready.
Well, I was burnt
Yeah.
out, and I was ready, and I just remember, you know, being asked at that time by my ex-wife, you know, what do you want? And I said I wanted to go home, and it was obvious that's what I wanted to do. Of course, I really didn't want to go home that much, because I got home and I was home for like 2 months, and I was back in Iraq, you know, as a contractor.
Right.
For that, so. But anyway, yeah, good time. Glad to hear he's doing good. That's awesome. Look, I saw his pictures, you know, your wife shared, and I looked and I was like, dear God, like I'm not kidding. I looked at him and thought, he's just starting. If I was a young private and I got to fleet and my squad leader like that, I'd be like, I would piss my pants. I'd be like, damn, this dude's going to kill us.
Oh, I know.
What I mean?
And he said
he is really, even physically, in his element. He looks like a beast.
He does. I mean, he left a kid, and now he looks like a beast. And he sent us a picture of the guys that he kind of hung around with at. You know,
and he hadn't even hit the fleet and started really lifting yet.
Right, exactly.
Dear God, he's going to jack.
And he's a head taller than just about everybody.
When he gets to the fleet and he realized that most of his days are going to consist of, when he's not actually training, administrative bullshit, formations, and going to the gym.
Yeah, that's what he's
eating.
Yeah.
You're not going to recognize it, dude. He's going to come back and just be like, you know,
the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah.
No, so I sent that. You saw the one picture of him running. I sent that picture of one of my running buddies from Kentucky when I was growing up, Harry Flodermersh. His sons are about my son's age, and so we still trade emails. And he just sent me pictures of one of his sons who was just awarded a Fulbright to Germany. And I was like, oh, great timing. I was just thinking about you yesterday. I have some recent pictures of Liam. Let me send them to you. And he saw the one of him running. He's like, oh my God, you used to run with your mouth open too. I was like, I did, you know, because my cross country coach used to say, hey, you need to learn how to breathe right. And I'm like, I can't do it. I just have to do it the way I do it.
But there's some, like, and I don't mean change subjects, but because I had that problem, right?
Yeah.
So I started reading a lot of running material and stuff, and there are some runners that advocate. They're saying, listen, your mouth, it's a preference. Like you'll read a lot of people say you have to breathe through the nose and that other kind of stuff. But then I've read other ones that said that's not true. Your mouth is the easiest place, the most relaxed to take in air. If you can breathe that way,
I just relax my jaw and
me too.
Run slack
jaw and hands,
you know? And that was the other thing. When I ran, they tried to get me to stop doing, because I swing from side to side.
Yeah,
they want me to do this, and I could never. I get one, but the other one would just go.
I could never. The farthest I ever ran was actually a Marine Corps run, and it was, I think we did an 8 mile one time, I did a 9 mile one time as a hazing exercise to my new guys.
Oh, you did it to them. Well, you had to go on it too.
Yeah, I went with them, but I didn't have anything in my pack, and they did. I told them at the end it wasn't really. But anyway, I was like, he's like, damn, Sarge, you're a brute. You were like, I had this guy from Boston, and he was like super in shape. He's like, tell you what, Sarge, man, like, I tell you what, like, and I was sitting there going, yeah, this is not nothing in it. And they was like, oh, that's fucked up, Sergeant, you know. But yeah, so the farthest I ran, I think was. That may have been a 9 mile. I can't remember. I know I've never ran over 9 miles, and it was like once or twice. But most of the time, 3 miles, which is what we had to run 5 miles sometimes. Average, I would run 1.5 miles, 2 miles just to kind of keep up. And I've never ventured farther
Well,
than that.
at my height, at my most running, when I was 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th grade, for about 4 years, toward the end, my buddy Harry and I would actually get up in the morning before school.
Yeah.
And he would either run to my house or I'd run to his house. And it's still dark out.
Right.
We'd run 3.1 miles before school. I'd shower. I'd ride my bike to school. Cross-country practice was in the afternoon after school. We'd run 3 to 6 miles in cross-country practice, and then Harry and I would run another 3.1 mile at around 9 o'clock that night. We did that 6 days a week for a year and a half. And we kept runner's logs. This is back when running just like exploded. Nike had just invented the waffle trainer, and it was becoming trendy to do it. And so we were part of that whole craze. I look back on it, I was like, I'm Forrest Gump. Why did I do that? And then I realized, I was running through puberty.
Yeah, there you go.
I didn't know what else to do with myself, so I was just running through puberty. And then we moved to South Texas, and it's flat as a pancake in South Texas, and I could run 6.2 miles from the house that I lived in with my dad and my sister, because we moved down before the rest of our family. I could run to the stop sign and back in a straight line and do 6.2 miles.
That's crazy.
And that's when I quit running.
Well, we've got a spot.
I was like, I couldn't do it.
We have a spot where you can do that now here.
Hey, really?
If you go out that between 278 and 35, they made that just random, like it's called 530.
Yeah.
It does have a hill. It's not flat.
Yeah.
It does have a hill. In fact, it goes up and then it flattens off.
And I don't know if it goes back down or whatever.
I don't know if it goes back down, whatever. But you can tell. You won't notice it unless you're actually running. Driving, you won't notice it unless you pay attention to the terrain on the side of the road. You can tell that's. But yeah, it's kind of cool. Well, anyway, so
yeah, he's doing great, and
good.
We're looking forward to hearing what kind of orders he has. And I don't know if it's 29 Palms, then he'll just have to click into a new mindset to get through that.
29 Palms sucks.
Yeah.
There's nothing that can be good.
And for those of you who haven't heard of it, it's in the middle of the Mojave Desert.
Yeah.
The town is called 29 Palms, and I think it has 38,000 people in it. And otherwise, there is nothing.
Yeah,
nothing.
It's where the Marine Corps does most of its big deployment preparation stuff. Before the war, it was solely used just for desert stuff,
And that's what it looks like. You can go online and you can see pictures of it. It looks like Afghanistan to me.
When we stayed there, I don't know what kind of living conditions they had, but the first time I went there was we went to the fleet in '99, and then that summer we went to CAX. It was called Combined Arms Exercise Training back then. It was a big MAGTF stuff. The whole point is, at the time, it's changed dramatically since I got out. But at the time I went there, they only had one purpose, and that was really to build up to run this one range. It was called Range 400.
Okay. And
it's a horrible range. It's like a mile or something. I don't even know the distance. It's crazy. Like, and I say you run the range, I'm talking about like if you're a grunt, you're gonna be moving that whole with everything. Right, it's an assault range. It's like but what it is it's a combined arms exercise. So essentially there's gonna be some bad guys down the range, right? It's huge range. It's a desert. It's not when we say a range and you're thinking guys on YouTube shooting at targets.
Right.
Not even in the same freaking planet.
Right.
I'm talking about, imagine going out to the desert, having mountains on both sides, kind of a, basically just a valley sort of deal. And then, at the end of it, like, you're basically just in that. Okay. Yeah. Imagine two fingers and just kind of coming down.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what you are. And then you have, a target, objective at the end of it. And it'll start with the big weapons, which will, attack it,
soften
things up, and then you'll move under those big weapons, and those big weapons will shift to smaller weapons, and they'll essentially shift off you as you move to the objective. So you may start off hitting with artillery and mortars and things like that. It's 80 millimeter mortars, boom, boom, big stuff. You'll have sniper teams that'll be up on an adjacent ridge line or something, shooting on it, 50 cals or whatever. They're big machine guns.
Right.
All this stuff will be going, and it's really based on that infantry company that's moving through it. So that rifle company, if it's kilo company, and second platoon is the main effort,
Right.
you know, you got weapons platoon and you got the company supporting you, you know, like weapons company attachment supporting you, and then you've got the weapons platoon stuff supporting you, and it's all about getting that infantry company, that rifle company up that range, and then of course you break into this company's responsibility is this, and this company's responsibility is that, or I'm sorry, this platoon's responsibility is this, and this is that, and your platoon is the main, you're going all the way to the objective.
Yeah.
So you got a long way to go. You've got to breach wire.
Yeah.
Concertina wire, you're throwing grappling hooks, laying dudes on top of stuff, crawling over it, hitting, and it's just you throw up so many times your first time doing it, and you know, and the whole idea, and then when you get, and it's dangerous, it's really, I mean,
because this is you're doing it with live fire and
we had mortars. The mortar section was firing. They had to cease fire, at a certain point, and we moved into the area. You know, they had ceased fire, and somehow they fired more mortars while we were danger close, which is really close to the mortars. So they're hitting it. Like we heard it, you know, danger close. And, you know, you have these guys called coyotes, and they're essentially evaluators. And they'll wear something, a designator, usually a cap or shirt or whatever. And you know who they are, and they're not in, but they're evaluating you. And they're also safety. The coyotes are like, you know, danger close, you know, and mortars are coming in. Oops, that was a mistake. We didn't mean to do that. But as you move closer, you have machine guns. When we first when we trained in the trenches, you had guys, you know, we had Marines with flags, you know, sticking out of their packs. And that was so the machine gunners knew in the trenches where you were, because they're shooting into the trenches in front of you. You know what I mean? They're shifting off of you. So it's really, really dangerous stuff. It doesn't feel dangerous when you're doing it because you practice so much and you work up so much and you know what you're doing, and it's really... But looking back on it, and that wasn't the only time you do exercises like that. That was just kind of the biggest one. But it was crazy.
Yeah, and that's what Liam said. He said, you know, everything they do at 29 Palms is really, really cool.
Yeah, it's all real miserable shit.
And my brother-in-law, Liam's namesake uncle, Dan.
Because you can do everything out there. There's nothing you can't do out there.
And Dan said the same thing. He got assigned for training for a particular thing at 29 Palms, but he was only there for like 2 weeks.
Yeah, that was us.
But he said it was miserable. He was like, I couldn't believe how bad, you know, how miserable it was. And he was a radio operator. But then they shifted him over somehow during this training thing to mortar.
Well, he's probably a radio operator for mortars.
Then he was doing that too. You know what I mean? He got trained on that too. And he explained to me, he's like, he said the mortar guys, he said really what their job is to stop the enemy from moving. So they're suppressing it. They're suppressing. It's not really, you're not really aiming, like you know, it's not like the javelin guys maybe, or the
it's indirect fire. It's indirect fire.
It's indirect fire, not direct. He said, but while we were doing it, he said we've been out there for 3 days longer than these other guys got out there, and so the other guys were terrible at it. And he said, but we didn't fiddle around, and so we were actually hitting hitting targets because we had figured it
dialed it in,
because they had left it the same target, you know, for 3 days. So he said, it was a great experience, and he was glad he wasn't out there for a lengthy period of time. But
I hated every minute of it.
We'll see.
But when we went there, you lived these there were 10. You lived in these 10 tents essentially, and it's the hottest other than actually Iraq, which in Iraq, I mean, it's definitely as miserable, you know, except for the difference is that I don't remember in 29 Palms training ever having to go into you know, what we call MOP 4 or your protective gear for chemical weapons. I don't ever remember going into MOP gear. In Iraq you did. That's what made it worse. But anyway, so good times, man, good times. So
absolutely.
Question, and this is kind of segueing into what we're going to talk about. You know, we're not on a time limit, by the way, because I'm not on.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm not on. We're not on.
We're not live or Podbean.
No, we're just gonna. It's not gonna go on Podbean or Spotify. This is gonna go on YouTube, and this is gonna go on Facebook.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So you will not. This episode will not be. I may transfer the audio over to Spotify, but that's not primarily. This is for viewing purposes, and we're not on a timeline. So, a couple things. And I've been trying to keep everyone updated with the Epstein case. I do not know if Ghislaine Maxwell has went before the federal judge yet, but she is going before a federal judge today, if not already. And I heard, obviously, if you're not following what's going on with her, she was Epstein's partner for a few years. And she was the one that was arrested a couple weeks ago at her residence. And there was some speculation, questions. I had some questions because there really wasn't a whole lot of details coming out. So some details that have come out with that was the raid team, when they hit the house, they came through the gate, and as they approached the house, the report says that she ran from one room to another. So my speculation that she might have known they were coming, I don't think so.
Exactly. We talked about that last time, and my speculation was she's been preparing for this the whole time. Why they had to arrest her as opposed to she just turned herself in with her lawyers. Right. Obviously, what they're saying now about the raid, she was not expecting that.
Yeah, it did. She didn't act like she was expecting it. In fact, they said she ran to another room. They had to force entry, which is usually, everyone always says kicking the doors in. No one kicks doors in, at least not unless they have to.
Right.
But, a battering ram type of deal, or even in some cases, I'm sure not with hers, but explosives and things like that.
Right.
But with this case, I believe they hit it with a ram, which means they were chasing her.
Right.
And if they are chasing her, it's probably not because, well, there could be a threat in the house.
Right.
There's going to always be another threat in the house.
Right.
But they're not so much concerned about her being a threat as evidence. Mm-hmm. So with drug task force, with narcotics raids,
right.
The reason why people say, well, I don't understand why, it's
got to be so violent.
Why it has to be so violent. Yeah. The reason is because the whole purpose of the raid is a search warrant.
Yeah.
And that is to preserve drugs.
Secure,
any doper is going to try to flush the dope, right? So that's why that's why they're so violent so fast.
Right.
It's not because it's necessarily, and there is a threat, but that's not the very underlining basis.
Right.
You're going to have to justify, is there a threat and all that kind of stuff. But even if there wasn't necessarily a threat, you're still going to go in hard there because you're trying to preserve the evidence.
Right.
So in this case, by them ramming a door and going in there, it's probably not because they're worried about her necessarily running away. I'm sure that they have drones up. They have the place surrounded at this point.
Well, I'm sure, too, it was a split-second decision. If they saw her through a window, she likely saw them through a window. You know what I mean? Like, why is she running away from the front door into another room and shutting the door? But obviously, she's aware.
But my point is that it was planned. You planned to go into a place house. That's how it's not something you don't really decide, okay, well, we're going to knock and hope she answers the door. Now we're going to knock the door in. No, that's from the planning phases, they were going for that purpose.
Well, actually, what I read was that they did knock on the door. They breached the gate, but then they knocked on the door and asked her to open the door, and she refused.
You know why they do that, though? That's feds. Yeah. They always knock before they have to.
Right.
Unlike us, and this is what I worked with FBI before.
Right.
They have a weird thing where they have to knock and identify themselves. I promise you, there was no intention whatsoever. It's not the way it sounds. Right. It's not a, hey, can you come open the door? No, it's a boom, 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 FBI.
Yeah.
That's what you're looking at.
See, that's why it's important to have conversations with people who know.
Yeah.
Because we read it in the newspaper.
Yeah.
And I have no information that would tell me that my impression of that is wrong.
And it may be the best case scenario for that knock on a door. It may have been a doo 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 FBI.
Yeah.
Doo 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 FBI.
Yeah.
Hit. Boom.
Yeah.
That's the slowest that's going to happen.
Yeah.
If I had to bet you money on this case, like with any other FBI or federal warrant,
this was already
the dude's reared back with her at the same time. Boom, boom, boom. FBI, open the door.
Yeah.
And they're inside. And especially if they've already seen her running.
Right.
I guarantee you, if they had intended on going doo 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 FBI, doo doo FBI, no, knock it, which they would have been doing. Once they saw her running, then it was like they were knocking as that ram was back and coming into the door. It was probably that fast. But they found her. Two things that were interesting. Two things that were interesting is they found her phone was wrapped in tinfoil, which was her misguided attempts to not be able to track her.
Right.
But that does say something about her, that she had studied, even if it was misplaced information.
Right.
She had studied ways to hide.
Yeah.
Okay, so she was educating herself, or her the person who was her hired ex-British military security guy had told her to do that or had her do that. In this situation, that was pretty much futile as far as the way things are done technologically. That tinfoil shit just not going to work. But anyway, having her shit on, if she'd had it on, put it on airplane mode, put it in something real, whatever, maybe. It just depends on how they're doing it. But that's how they got her. Another important thing that I didn't know where her passports were to. Everyone kept saying she had 3 passports, but they never said what to wear.
Right.
Well, it's important to notice that one of the reasons why the prosecution is so concerned about the passports is one of them is a French passport.
Yeah, that makes a difference.
And that is a non-extraditionary country.
Right.
France doesn't have to do it.
Which is so surprising to me that we don't have an extradition agreement with France.
I was actually going to ask you if you knew anything about why we might not, because I had no idea.
I think France is one of those countries that will not...
French Foreign Legion, just keep that in mind.
Okay, but will not, modern times, will... And I may be wrong about this, so you guys know, you hear this, you can correct me. But there are a lot of countries that will not extradite somebody who is eligible for the death penalty.
Yeah.
But I think in France's case, they won't even make an extradition agreement with a country that has the death penalty. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So they won't have one with the United States because we have the death penalty. Not that Ghislaine Maxwell is eligible for the death penalty for any of the crimes for which she's been accused.
Yeah.
She's not. So Roman Polanski, for instance, after he pleads guilty to raping a 12-year-old girl, lives the rest of his life in France and continues making films.
Yep.
And there's nothing we can do about it.
Rosemary Baby, that's who we're talking about.
Yeah, and so you guys can look that up if you want to go down that particular rabbit hole, although I think it's related to other things we might talk about.
Yeah, we're going to talk about them.
So yeah, I think that might be the case with France.
But it's interesting too because the reason why I said French Foreign Legion is because they are still current. In fact, they still operate all over the world in Iraq, and they don't currently. And I don't know how new this is. It used to be like a complete. Didn't matter what you did, you could go to French Foreign Legion, and part of that was you restart your life. They give you a new identity, they give you a new passport. They still do all that.
Right.
They have stricter, at least officially, they have stricter things, as far as who you can be and getting in and whatever. But at the time, that was they didn't extradite, and I remember talking to French soldiers, and they was explaining that. It was like they don't, not the extradition thing, but it makes sense that if you come to France and you do certain things, they protect you. And they brought up the French Foreign Legion.
Right.
Hearing that France doesn't extradite, it would make sense because those two things would have to be
that
would have to be part of it. That France is a non-extraditionary country, therefore the Foreign Legion could bring you in and not be expected if someone said, hey, he was a Marine before he became a French Foreign Legionnaire, and he also murdered 16 people.
Right.
Now I'm sure that would happen. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I really don't. So yeah, I think that's one of the things. And the other thing, her attorneys are asking for her to be allowed to, have an ankle bracelet and be under house arrest because of COVID-19. Yep. And the question there is, why should she be treated any differently than any other person who's been accused of similar level of federal crimes that she's been accused of? So we'll see how that turns out. I'll be surprised if she gets out for bail.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be offered because she is super rich or has access to funds.
She has access to about 20 million.
Yeah.
Has about 4 million, and I think 4 and 2 million in actual bank accounts of hers.
Yeah.
One in a French bank account, I believe, and one in a British.
And that's another part of the argument by the prosecution about why she's a flight risk, because she has, since she went into hiding, she's opened 20 more bank accounts, and she's been shifting money around. You know what I mean? Like that's part of what the FBI already knows she's been doing.
Yeah,
because they've been tracking her.
They believe that she is training and prepared for hiding.
Yeah.
That's actually what it says.
Yeah.
If you look at the stuff, it says one of the reasons is she's.
I'll be really surprised. And something we touched on last time that I wanted to go back to a little bit when we were talking about the crimes that she's been accused of. One of the things I read said that, actually I think it was the attorney, what's his name, that sort of wrote an article defending her. He said, the statute of limitations might turn out to be a problem. And I wanted to clarify what happened with the statute of limitations on these crimes. Because when these crimes were committed, the statute of limitations read one way. Then legislation in Congress in 2003, I believe, changed the language of the statute of limitations.
Okay.
So it used to be if you were a minor and you had these kinds of crimes committed against you, you had until the age of X or 10 years, whatever was longer. Well, the age of X was changed to lifetime.
Which is why some people say there's no statute of limitations.
Well, there is, because the reason it says lifetime is that's in the case of, from the time, but here's the crucial part about the crimes that she's been accused of and that she's been charged with.
Yeah.
If the girls that have been willing to testify and that are victim 1, victim 2, victim 3, the victims that have been identified in the indictment, if they were under 25 in 2003 when the legislation passed, then the statute of limitations, the new statute of limitations applies to them. If they were over 18 in 2003, because we're talking about crimes that got committed back in 1994, 95, 96. If they were over 18 at that time, it might not. So it's going to come down to a case-by-case basis with the victims, whether charges
But they
will get
knew
thrown
this
out.
already.
They already know. That's why I'm saying. If I hemmed and hawed last time we talked about it a little bit about whether the statute of limitations, I've since decided, one, they wouldn't have brought the charges unless they were absolutely dead certain that the statute wasn't going to work against them and all of that stuff. So
so I would hope so. At the same time, like we talked about earlier, the whole open-ended agreement. What am I trying to say? The immunity thing.
Exactly.
It's like this stuff was handled so badly originally that they're fighting. They're gonna have to fight over that, and she's gonna have she's gonna have a crack
team of attorneys.
I want to say this on the record right now. Everyone right now she's guilty. Okay? Right. Everyone right now, she's guilty.
Right. By
the time they're done with her, I challenge you. Like, let's come back to this in 2 months.
Yeah.
Or as the trial starts unfolding, her money, the media, they're gonna start downplaying her.
Yeah.
And I promise you, in 3 or 4 months, by the time this goes to trial, the publicity campaign on her favor is going to have to change a lot of people's mind. I think it's going to go through a few phases. I think people are going to stop kind of being so aggressive towards her because, she's going to, I think she's working with. I think she flipped. I think she's changed. I think whatever. She wasn't really that involved. It was only a few years. These girls are lying about her involvement. They were this. They were prostitutes. They were whores. They were this right here.
Right.
They are going to attack the sources so hard, but by the end of this, the defense and a lot of people in the media and a lot of people watching this, and you're going to start seeing it, are going to start saying it really wasn't so much just Ghislaine Maxwell. It was really just Epstein because he's dead, and I see her being downplayed. I just want to get that on the record because when it starts happening, I'm going to say go back to Tuesday, and I said this was going to happen. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
And there's going to be some people saying, she's got a lot of money to spend on lawyers, and they're going to be good.
Sure. And
publicists, not just trial stuff. It's going to start.
And, there are different ways to look at it. On the one hand, last time I pointed out she didn't leave the country, interestingly, even though she has a French passport and could have, right?
Yeah.
So to me, that indicates that she was working with.
Well, I saw another article that said she's left the country up to 36 times.
Right.
Is that true?
Oh, who knows? How do
you leave the country 36 times if you're under?
Exactly.
I know she wasn't under arrest or even, but
if she is working with, then maybe the raid that we saw and the arrest that we saw was for show.
Oh no! Just for clarity, I thought it was for show.
Yeah.
I don't think. Well, it still could have been planned for show. I think when they saw her running it, if it was for show, it changed. It got real quick.
Right.
But I have no problem believing it was for show. I have no problem believing she's working with attorneys. I also believe she's 100% a monster and she's completely guilty of this stuff, and that she is going to. What I'm saying? So I think that those things are true.
Right.
I think they're going to be highlighted. They're going to spin it to where, look, she's been working with authorities. She was only involved in with Jeffrey Epstein for this time to this time, and this didn't start until this time, so she wasn't involved then, and yada yada yada. And I think it's going to be a big, diversion thing. My opinion about these people is like my opinion about other conspiracies, and that is, for instance, Lee Harvey Oswald. People always say, people ask me, do you think Lee Harvey Oswald killed President Kennedy? I think it's entirely possible.
Yeah.
100%. I don't think he worked alone in the concept and planning phase.
Right.
Did he shoot him by himself? I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
There's some weird stuff about it, but I don't know. But I've never doubted that he was the person. If I'm behind something and I want the President of the United States killed, and I can find some guy like him to do it, and I think he can pull it off,
right?
Then that's a win for everybody. You know what I mean? I still think there could be a conspiracy. I don't think it means that there was a CIA hit team that triangulated a shot on, the moon landing. and I know we're getting off subject, but we got all the time in the world. And we're going to get back to all these notes here because I know you got a lot of good shit here.
Well, it's not a lot. It's just I've been thinking about this, and all of it dovetails. You know what I mean? Like it all kind of connects together in that eyes wide shut kind of way.
Good. What I wanted to talk about, like you know, with the moon, like I don't want to say this because this is off the subject, but like I said, we don't really have a whatever. People ask me, you know, about the moon landing stuff because I've looked into all that stuff too. I think I've said this before, but you know the main reason no one ever talks about why I believe 100% we went to the moon? This is the reason. Everyone talks about, you know, can you prove this, lighting this, ships, you know, this, all this stuff.
Right.
Let me break it down though. This is the simplest way. This is not Neil Tyson deGrasse, but this is his type of logic.
Right.
It's real simple. How many times did we go to the moon? Right, how many times do we claim we went to the moon? Apollo 11, right? 12, 13 didn't make it. 14, 15, and was there 16? I don't know, like 5 times?
Right.
I may be wrong on that.
Right.
I'm not a historian. It doesn't require a historian to have use some common sense on this.
Right.
If you're going to fake going to the moon,
right.
The biggest concern, and these were NASA engineers, so you can't tell me engineers, not one in whatever it was, 10,000, 100,000 NASA engineers that required to make this feat happen over 10 years. So it's going to cross a lot of them's mind that this doesn't just have to be pulled off perfectly, it has to age well.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
We can't have in 50 years, when we really do go to the moon, we can't have them going to the moon and realizing we screwed something up real bad and that's not the way it really is. All right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, it has to age well, guys.
Yeah.
So let's just pretend that we got 100,000 scientists and hoaxers together. I'll even take the big conspiracy, the main conspiracy. Let's just say we figured out a way to keep everyone else in the dark, and maybe there was 100 people that knew we weren't actually, whatever they say it was.
Yeah.
And we figured out, listen, all the details, the film, we got to make sure the film ages well, the props, we got to make sure, like, what if in 2020 they come up with some technology that can, you know, undo film and you know, figure some shit.
Right.
Like, you just don't know, right? You
Right.
just don't know. If you're going to go through all the trouble to get all that right, you better do that shit only once.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You do that shit once. You say, we went to the moon, we made it, boom, it's over with. You don't go back 5 times and repeat those risks over and over and over and involve more people and more chance that
that's always the thing with conspiracy theories. You know, when they work, they have to work perfectly.
They have to work perfectly. So I say all that, not just to ramble, but I want to establish that I do have an investigative mind and I have a skeptical mind, and there's some stuff like what we're talking about with the Wayfair thing that's coming up, with even the Pizzagate stuff. I think what bothers me about conspiracy theories is the people that are so far against them don't want them investigated, even if they're bullshit.
Yeah.
Don't come at me and say that's just a crazy conspiracy theory. Maybe it is, dude.
Yeah.
But I just need you to explain to me why these cabinets cost $15,000. And, you know, just explain to me that. Give me a reason.
Yeah.
And I'm perfectly willing to hear it. You know, the Pizzagate stuff, whatever, okay? Explain to me what these fucking emails were talking about then, dude.
Exactly.
Maybe it wasn't maybe it wasn't pedophilia. Maybe it was just prostitution. Or maybe it was a military code word or something.
Right.
Tell me something, because when I read them, I put a lot of shit into those words and nothing makes sense unless you're talking about prostitution or, you know.
Exactly. And I've looked at them too. Back to the moon landings too. The other thing, you know, this is why when people say that Christianity itself or the church itself is just a vast conspiracy, I'm like, well, if that's true, then first century AD guys would have had to figure out
they were good
how to fool people 2,000 years later, and you're not telling me that they would have been able to predict everything in the future. The other thing I'd bring up is, don't forget the context within which we would have faked the moon landing would have been in a race to space with the Soviet Union.
The Soviets were trying to...
All right, you guys have heard of the Irish band U2?
Yeah.
Most people these days don't understand why U2 is called U2, the letter U2. It's because of the U2 incident that happened between the United States spy plane and Russia. Soviet Union shot down a U2 spy plane that could take the picture of a golf ball from 2.5 miles away.
And that was way before satellites.
And this is in the 50s.
Yeah, this is in the 50s, man.
And they grabbed the plane. The pilot survived.
Yep.
They weren't going to give him back. And they claimed that the United States had violated their airspace. And the United States said, no, we did not. And they're like, so what's the rule on airspace, Casey?
I forget what the mileage is, but it's
not a static thing. Here's how it works. If I can shoot you down,
Oh,
you're in my airspace.
Yeah. That's a good
Now,
way
we're
to
not
get-
talking about
an operational
We're not
thing,
talking
yeah.
about aircraft to aircraft, right? We're talking about if I can shoot you down from the land, you're in my airspace.
Yeah.
Right? That's
What's
it.
power? If I can make you do it, I have power.
So obviously they grabbed him. He got back, but that's why the band U2 is named U2. They named themselves after that. But here's the point: if we faked it, then we would have had to fool the Russians.
Yeah.
And how many of you have
And the Russians went to the moon too.
Right.
They just didn't land on it.
But how many of you have decided that you're going to trust Russian anti-United States propaganda about whether we did or did not go to the moon? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a big part of that conspiracy, I've never heard of what the Russian angle is. Seems like they would have jumped on it.
Yeah.
Seems like they would have stoked it. Seems like they'd be offering proof. I've never heard them say boo about it, right?
Well, no,
and the other thing I'd bring up on that count is, Ronald Reagan got ridiculed when he announced to the world that we were developing a Star Wars system, right?
Yeah.
Right?
And just like Trump got ridiculed with Space Force.
Right, and you guys think this sounds silly, but it worked. It helped actually collapse the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
Because they became so alarmed that this crazy American president was telling the
They
truth.
put laser guns in the space and
Right,
shoot down our missiles.
and as you know, 5 years ago we shot down a washing machine-sized satellite over the Pacific Ocean with a laser beam from a ship, from a Navy ship.
Yep.
And kids were like, "How do you know?" And I'm like, "Because they announced it. Why would they announce something like that?"
Yeah.
Well, because they want China to know we can.
Yeah.
So you do it in front of them.
There's some things that you don't want them to know we can do. There's some things you do want them to know we can do.
So if we can go to the moon,
Yeah.
if we can build a satellite shield
Yep.
that effectively neutralizes Soviet nuclear weapon, because you got to understand, ballistic missiles with nuclear warheads actually have to travel outside of the atmosphere and come back in.
That's right.
They don't go through the air. They go into space and then they come back
They
down.
orbit, they come back in. Or
Exactly.
Not, in orbit,
Not necessarily orbit, but you know what I mean?
Low orbit, then they come back in.
And so if we had figured out a way to be able to neutralize them while they were in space, well, you're done. Nuclear weapons are completely neutralized. The point is that works.
Yeah.
Whether that was a hoax or not, that works.
Yeah.
And then Trump does Space Force. But going back to Pizzagate, right?
Yeah.
So I looked into this a little bit. I had seen the things about it, and I wanted to ask you, what do you make of it? Like I've seen the emails too that are talking about pizza.
I think there's
You know what I mean? And I'm like, okay, first of all, who knew that the language of pedophilia uses pizza words? Or what, you know what I mean? Like I didn't know that. Is this something that people learn from 4chan or from Reddit or subreddits, or you know what I mean? What is the genesis of? I know it comes from the leaked emails, but somebody who looked at the emails had to be able to say, "Oh, that's code, pedophilia code." Are these law enforcement people that looked at it and said that?
Well,
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I think so. Here's the thing, and you read the emails. It's kind of it forces you to ask a couple questions. Number one, is this literal? Are they really talking about pizza? Or are they not?
Right.
This is what critics of the conspiracy, they want to shut this down. They don't even want to talk about that. They want to ignore that. In fact, most of the time when you say Pizzagate, the response you will get, be careful talking about that. That almost got some innocent man killed in the pizza place. Some dude, you guys caused this to happen.
Right.
That infuriates me when someone says that. Because first of all, I didn't say I believe in this shit, but don't come to me and start telling me that asking questions causes bad stuff to happen, because that is oppression right there.
Right.
Now you're and that has become a tactic on the left.
Well,
I've got messages when I've said stuff. I've got messages from people that say, be careful saying things like that. No. Don't ever fucking message me and tell me to be careful, because I'm going to take it as a threat. Now, if you mean that as a personal, hey, listen, then you can message me and say this happened to so and so, but don't try to, and that's the problem. Did it happen? Were we talking literal, or are we not?
Right.
That's the first question. It's obvious to me, and anyone that reads it, that those are code words. Okay.
Okay.
That's obvious. it doesn't mean that they were pedophilia in themselves.
Right.
It doesn't mean that. It could. And this is where your question is interesting. The subculture of that stuff is big. Okay, right. And there are it's so big that the FBI, when they investigate, or law enforcement, when they investigate child, sex crimes and things like that,
right.
This is something that's commonly known. This is something that's taught at police academies. This is something you're going to find, these symbols you're going to find. You have a class in the police academy for like gang symbols and different other symbols that are used, and you learn things like, just everything from gypsy symbols to these. You learn these things. Now, I can't tell you on the record that I remember. I do believe that we had these symbols in our some type of version. But don't quote me on that. I have to go back and look.
Right.
But these things were pulled off. These were FBI known things. So somebody, more than likely, when this thing sprang up, somebody that was involved, somebody maybe in this culture, or at least knew about this culture, said, "No, whoa, wait a minute," you know what I mean? And then it was, this, and this.
Or maybe a retired, FBI agent
somebody
who saw them.
Well, it started like on a Reddit and 4chan.
Exactly.
Right? So you don't know, but the thing is, I believe it started with the guy. The reason why the dude went to try to shoot this guy, I don't think anyone was hurt, was because this guy has a really messed up. He's a messed up guy. Like, look into him. The owner of the pizza place that the left wants to say, people come across because they don't want you asking questions. They'll say this innocent guy, and most people say, okay, he's just owner of a pizza thing.
And he was interviewed by multiple outlets. He's quoted in the New York Times.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about him, but I will say this.
He's got some really, really,
Again, this is one of those things when you're dealing with conspiracy theories. You
gotta be careful.
You have to be careful, but also, you look at it one way and then you look at it another way. It's really hard to penetrate through because on the one hand, the place is called Cosmic Ping Pong.
Yeah, Comet Ping Pong.
Or Comet.
Yeah.
Yeah. And people were claiming, heck, last week, USA Today announced that the Trump campaign is using a Nazi eagle on its T-shirts, and I posted. I'm like, well, I'm sorry, but the eagle has been the symbol of America since we've been the United States, and we precede the Nazis by several hundred years.
So you're insinuating
150 years or whatever. So you're insinuating that we were Nazis before Nazis were Nazis, or
right? So you got to be careful about.
So and then USA Today had to come back embarrassingly and be like, oh, sorry,
we were idiots.
That's really, really dumb. So apparently some of the symbols that were used by this Comet Ping Pong resemble symbols that are known in police academies as ones that are associated with child trafficking.
The question is, are there other reasons from? And I'll give you an example for this one, okay? And this is something that I just saw. Of course. I'm sure the anti-Catholics who are, conspiracy theories there, are saying things, but, the triangle stuff, those are used, and you'll see those on even like, clergy's things, you know what I mean? And maybe you know what that is, if it's just decorative or whatever, but I'm saying, so you have to, just because pedophilia is adopted, or they may have adopted that triangle, doesn't mean that it's theirs now. Doesn't mean that the history has only been with them. Where did they get it from?
Well, think about it. The pentagram, right? The pentagram was adopted by Satanists because it was long before that was used as a Catholic symbol,
right?
To symbolize. It's in Sir Gawain and the Green Knight all over the place,
right?
That doesn't make that a satanic poem, but I bet you can find a conspiracy theory where it was like, the Gawain poet was, you know what I mean? And so
in the swastika, the reverse is the reverse of a Buddhist symbol, is it not?
Yeah, a Hindu symbol.
A Hindu symbol,
and also the Greek key. The Greek key motif is the swastika, but it's just linked up with a bunch of other ones, and it's a symbol for eternity, which is why the Nazis chose it, because it symbolizes eternity.
So these symbols are hijacked, and here's the messed up thing about the pizza stuff with pedophilia. They hijacked my favorite pizza.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I love cheese pizza, and now someone's going to clip that saying.
Right.
But yeah. So like that's when you read these emails, and then it's a conjunction of a lot of stuff. It's some of the art that was allegedly pulled out of Tony Podesta's apartment, and which is there's a lot of pictures and of children, and it's just weird, really, really weird stuff. And of course, then it's connection. It's connection to this person, a connection to that person. But
But what makes me suspicious about this stuff?
Yeah.
And I don't want to egg anybody on either way. So I looked it up.
Yeah.
Google Pizzagate.
Yeah.
Google some of the reporters that were reporting on it in 2016 when the emails were dumped on WikiLeaks, right? And what you get when you pull it up on the internet is nothing but this is a hoax.
Oh yeah, you absolutely not.
You go to Wikipedia and it's not called Wikipedia. The entry on it in Wikipedia is not called Pizzagate. It's called Pizzagate hoax debunked. Like it and every other description of it in the Wikipedia entry is made up, fake news, hoax, lies. You know what I mean? Like the entry in Wikipedia works its butt off to convince anybody that's reading it that it has thoroughly been debunked.
Yeah, go away, there's nothing here. And that's where that Lisa Cochran, or
Liz
Cochran, right?
Crokin. I had to look her up and I wrote down her name. She's been banned from Twitter, and she was one of the early reporters to report on it. Interestingly enough, when I did Pizzagate, right, her name is nowhere in the Wikipedia entry.
Interesting.
I thought, how odd is that? Other people are named.
Yeah,
the guy that shot up the pizza place is named.
Yeah.
Another guy that phoned in a threat to Best Us Pizza, which is 3 doors down from this pizza place.
Yeah.
Said, I'm going to finish what the other guy failed to do. He got prosecuted. He's from Louisiana. They both got prosecuted for doing this. So when you walk away from the Wikipedia entry, there's no counter evidence in it at all. There's no.
That's what bothers me.
Right.
Like, why can't? And what bothers me is this right here. It's not the conspiracy theory. It's the fact that when this goes back to the moon landing. Mm-hmm. Okay. I don't believe we went to the moon.
Right.
Okay, I can prove to you we went to the moon.
Right.
All right. Well, how do you explain this? Well, this is how to explain it.
Right.
Okay. That's how you end a conspiracy theory.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
That makes sense. That's what you want to hear. The rogue way, our policy on conspiracy theories is, if it's right, it's right. If it's wrong, then enter some evidence and argue it and say this is why it's wrong.
Right.
The problem we have with the counter conspiracy theories is that when they can't, or they don't want to. Okay, so you're telling me that and I don't even want to say Pizzagate anymore. I want to say John Podesta's emails.
Right.
All right? Because I'm not talking about conspiracy theory. Right. I'm talking about his emails. Yeah. That's it. I don't give a shit about Pizzagate.
Yeah.
I do care if it's real, but I'm saying, I'm asking you, don't come at me and say Pizzagate's been disproved. I'm not talking about Pizzagate. I'm talking about John Podesta's emails.
Right.
What is this about? Are these references to Cheese Pizza about child pornography, prostitution, or pedophilia?
Yeah.
No, they're not. That's crazy. Why is it crazy?
Right.
Because it's just crazy. So what does it mean? That's just crazy conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
You're stupid for even talking about it.
Yeah.
Well, what does it mean? That's what caused that person to go into Comet Pizza and shoot that place up. Right. All right, and you're contributing to it. But what are these emails about? That stuff like that is. But what are these emails about?
Yeah.
Dude, really? Like JFK? I don't believe Lee Harvey Oswald shot JFK. I do. Why do you believe that? Well, because number one, the shot's physically possible. Number two, da-da-da. Number three, da-da-da.
Yeah.
But what if someone said, I don't believe Lee Harvey Oswald shot Kennedy? Well, you're just fucking stupid. You're crazy.
Yeah.
But why, how can you prove to me that he shot him? Shut up. You're just crazy.
Yeah.
I'm not, you're just dumb. This is just conspiracy theories. But prove to me he could, I'm not, this,
Yeah. I don't know.
That's what bothers me about it.
Yeah, can it be falsified or not? Do you see what I mean?
That's my question.
If the Podesta emails did indicate something nefarious, right?
Mm-hmm.
One great way to defend yourself against it is to simply add your hoax component to the truth to make it outrageous.
Right.
Because my question was all right, I get it. These are references to pizza. You tell me that in the academy, you guys will take a class on code words that are used by pedophiles on the internet, symbols and certain images, right?
Yeah.
And what they mean, and that's what currently, and these things do change over time. Okay, I get that, but how the heck did it get even remotely, attached to a pizza place in
Yeah.
Washington D.C.? Like, how did
What
that
kind of brevity card is that?
Like,
Who is the jokester? Now this is
yeah, exactly.
what if this is a Joe Rogan monologue I hear? I think
Yeah,
that some dude that was responsible for assigning code words
right.
said, all right, when we're talking about foreign dignitaries' gifts,
Yeah,
we will now refer to all foreign dignitary gifts as, dude, don't do it. We're going to get so fired for this. Don't tell him that. Pizza.
yeah.
Well, that sounds good. That sounds like John Podesta's going, that sounds like a really good idea. Pizza. Yeah, no one will ever. And meanwhile, the other guy behind him, dude, don't do that. That's pedophilia. I know, bro. This is going to be legendary.
This is going to be so
We're
funny.
going to start a freaking,
Yeah.
What if that happened?
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously it could have, right?
We don't know.
Because that would be the smart way to do it.
But
when I was watching, and for those of you who want to know, Liz Crokin, she started out in as an intern, as a reporter, as a journalist. She ended up working for Us magazine, covering celebrities all over the world. She did a lot of reporting on the Anna Nicole Smith
Did she?
death,
Okay.
and then the fight over her children and boyfriend and husband and all that stuff. And then she has a background with Trump in the sense, as a reporter, she covered The Apprentice.
Really?
Yeah, which I think was being shot in Chicago. And so through that, she got to know the Trump family. And one of her motivations, and one of the ways that she's being castigated on things like Twitter and stuff, is one, she's a Trumper, so she's crazy anyway. But she started.
Plus, she's just a damn racist.
She said back in the day, back when she was covering The Apprentice, Hollywood loved Trump
They did.
and the Trump family.
They did.
And then he announced that he was going to run for the Republicans. She said, and they turned like that. And she said, I just couldn't stand by because I know him, not good friends.
Yeah.
And then she ended up getting hooked up with a stuntman out in Hollywood who did a documentary. This is what caught my attention when you mentioned it, because I wasn't aware of it at all, called Out of Shadow.
Yeah.
Out of Shadows. And that guy's
Which
name,
has already been attacked, by the way.
Oh, of course.
It's gotten popular, and they're already saying,
and that's written, directed, produced by Mike Smith, who is a longtime stuntman in Hollywood.
Yep.
And then he hooked up with a friend of his that he'd known from the industry named Brad Martin, who ended up becoming involved and becoming one of the producers. And then Liz Crokin, they somehow got
he
to
just
know
sought
each
her
other
out.
too. Yeah.
He sought her out, I believe.
And she helped put together this documentary. It's on YouTube, but I heard them. So
It's
what
linked,
I did.
by the way, it's linked. If you're following this, I'm going to go plug out real
Yeah.
quick. If you're following this right now, I've set up a private group. It's research, it's bias. You can get on there, you can post crazy stuff on there. Don't be offended if someone says that's stupid and this is why.
Right.
But it's just about this subject. I don't want the rogue way to, our podcast and, our lives and our personal social media to be engulfed in this stuff, because it's such a dark subject that we all want to live normal lives. But I set up a private group, so there is a place if you run across something or you're interested in looking at this stuff or discussing it. Sometimes there's a place you can go to do that privately, to where you don't have to feel like people are looking at you crazy. You can throw in the craziest conspiracy theories you want, and guys like Dr. Borse and myself will look at it, we'll talk to you about it, tell you what we think. But at the same time, I don't want to post a lot of the stuff on my main page, just because I don't want my main page, my social media, we don't want the podcast to be solely about that thing.
Right.
So, but anyway, the link, he's talking about Out of Shadows, the link is on the Rogue Way page, I believe.
Yeah.
But if not, it's on, you can send me a request on Facebook to join the group. It's Mark 942, which is a reference to Jesus's I know it was in the other Gospels. I believe he said this in Luke, but in St. Mark, chapter 9, verse 42, Jesus says
42.
that it is better to have a millstone, a heavy rock tied around your neck, and to be thrown into the sea, than if you offend, lead astray, or sin against one of these little ones.
One of my children.
One of my children. So that's a reference to that verse. And feel free to send me a request. I believe you're a moderator on it. I'm not sure if you are or not. If you're not, I'll
I need to go look, because I just noticed it the other day.
Yeah.
And that sent me to the documentary, which is called Out of Shadows.
That was my plug. Out of Shadows, back to Greg.
By Mike Smith, and they have a website. You can go directly to their website. I heard, now what I did something cool this morning. I got up kind of early, and I wanted to find out more. Watched the documentary last night.
Yeah.
It's quite good, and it's maybe an hour, an hour and 12, an hour 15 minutes long. But then I found an interview that Brad Martin and Mike Smith and Liz Crokin did with Charmaine Nugent.
Who was that?
Ted Nugent's wife of 31 years.
Oh, wow.
And she, and they were all coming at it from, they're all Christian, okay?
Yeah.
They're believers. They've all worked in industries that are antithetical to what they have come to believe.
Yeah.
Right? Mike Smith, he said the genesis of all this for him was, and he is one of the most sought after, or was one of the most sought after stunt doubles in the business.
Yeah, he's done a lot of stuff.
He's done a lot of really cool stuff. And he said that what happened with him is he was on a movie set, he did a stunt, and he broke his couple of his lower vertebra.
He had a tragic, essentially ended up being a pelvis injury.
He became paralyzed, but he's recovered.
Yeah, temporary paralyzed. Yeah.
So it was during that period that he had a pelvic therapy counselor or whatever, right? Physical therapy.
Called a physical
pelvic
floor specialist, floor therapist,
something
whatever.
like that. And she made a comment to him about, they got into a conversation about sex trafficking and pedophilia in Hollywood, and this stuff is out. Corey Feldman, poor guy, is
been
trying
telling us
to get
for years.
Yeah, it's been telling people for years and years, and
Charlie Sheen, he was finally come out. Yeah.
Yeah, so
finally said it.
And it's the big open secret in Hollywood, it seems to me. But Mike said, this woman, he doesn't name her. She asked if she could pray over him, and he was like, I went to church. I never believed it when I was in church. But he ended up, while he was recovering, he kind of had an epiphany. He kind of had a conversion experience over that time. And he said it's not an event; it's a process. Which I thought was a very interesting way of putting it. I thought that was really
I would
smart.
agree with that.
Yeah.
And, I would agree with that. It's not. There's not a magical moment.
But then he started looking back, the same way you were just talking about. All right, it's a conspiracy theory, but explain this, or it's not a conspiracy. You know what I mean? It really happened. Where's the evidence? And he just started looking back at his own experiences and looking at them through a different kind of lens.
Yeah.
And speaking of, Podesta's, you've read accounts where Podesta had weird artwork or images, or you know what I mean?
Yeah. Tony Podesta did, which is connected.
Or Tony, yeah,
is
the brother.
Different Podesta, yeah, bro.
Yeah. But Mike said the same thing. He said, I've been in this world, and I'd been to people's places, and then I started thinking about things I had seen at those places, and I thought, you know what I mean? Like, does that mean that? Really? Because I didn't think so, but, right? And Liz, too, having worked for Us Weekly on the celebrity beat, had been around. So my question is, and one of the things they point out in this documentary has to do with one of the questions they asked, and I wrote this down, is the CIA involved in Hollywood? Yes.
Yeah, right. Well, and I want to give a...
And I wanted you to comment.
I'm sitting here drinking out of a mug, so it's really appropriate that I comment on that, because it is 100%, and this is not a conspiratorial. I'm not even going to get to because I don't know what the implications of it are, but I will say this: there are some things that we know for a fact. CIA, DOD, military stuff is always going to be involved in Hollywood as well as journalism and stuff, because when you're talking about information, there's certain things that will be, this is common sense. Just like the police department, you don't even don't think of it as in big CIA terms, all that. Think of it as like a local law enforcement or government standard,
right.
Okay? The city government of any town is going to have a relationship with the city paper, right?
Right.
Because there's certain things the city government wants to know people to know that they're doing.
Right.
Okay? In less transparent city governments, and it tends to happen in all probably,
right.
There's going to be probably some backdoor dealing as far as like, listen, if you can, kind of this article that you wrote, if you can kind of when the paper comes out next time, if you kind of like clarify this part, or this is whatever, I'm going to give you some, the chief of police might give you access to crime information a little bit quicker if you do this you know what I mean?
Right.
So you're going to have that stuff that's just, I'm not saying it's like malicious, but it's just kind of the nature of the beast. It's going to happen. Now imagine that on a scale to where you actually are worried about national security. Well, you're
Right.
worried about what go back to the moon landing thing.
Right,
You know,
right.
Go back to, for a long time, I actually suspected that the UFO phenomenon was a Star Wars program, in
Right.
the sense that a lot of this stuff is faked by like certain things to make the Russians think that we have something, or we have like. I wondered for a long time if the Roswell incident wasn't just fabricated.
Right.
Like, we crashed something out in the desert. We allowed the Air Force to come in. We allowed them to make a big paper about, to actually
Right.
print, just to scare the Soviets, to make them think. What would the Soviet Union think if they thought that we actually captured an alien spaceship with aliens that may be alive?
Right.
That would have to scare the crap out of them, right?
Yeah.
So my point is who knows if that's what Roswell? Everyone always says the government's covering up aliens crashing at Roswell. What if the government's covering up they crashed at Roswell?
Or what if the government
It's a
is
fake,
what if the government is putting, like, I've seen films from fighter planes on training missions of an orb-like
Well, it's
thing
real.
right in the middle of the day, and these pilots going, "You see that? Do you see that?"
The Pentagon officially released that this year, that these, and they retermed it. It's no longer called UFOs anymore. They have redefined it, and I know I'm getting off subject, but we'll circle back around. We'll circle back around.
Yeah.
They have retermed these unidentified or unexplained aerial phenomena, something to that effect.
Right.
And they rebranded it. Essentially, they've rebranded it so that now it can be acceptable to talk about these things. And they've said, yes, these things are real.
Yeah.
They're doing maneuvers that we do not have the capability of.
Yeah.
We do not have.
Right.
Now, that's interesting to me. Everyone says, they're finally opening about UFOs, or
Right.
they're covering their asses because it's our shit.
And that's what I was going to say. If I'm the American government and I need to do some super secret testing of stuff in real time to find out blah blah blah, well, one of the ways that I'd cover it is to increase the UFO sightings in the area around where I'm doing it, so that the next time people see something that they can't explain, oh, that's another. So we see UFOs here all the time. You know what I mean? Cover the fact that that's actually something we're testing.
I'll tell you what, and I'll tell you something you need to research. If you're into this type of stuff and you really want to research encounters between fighter planes and unexplained aerial phenomena, and you really want to get some interesting perspective. Fighter pilots, I know you're out there. Correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but it's interesting to me. I would be more interested to know how many times does this happen with planes that are armed,
right,
versus planes that are not armed.
Right.
Both of these situations were conveniently off the coast, East Coast and West Coast, where there were big military training operations involved, and the planes that were in the air were involved in force-on-force training exercises. But you know what they don't do? You know what military planes don't do when they're doing training exercises like this? Now there's live fire exercises, right. like out at 29 Palms and places like that, where they're going to drop ordnance and they're going to fire on things. But when they're doing force-on-force out with big naval things, you know what they don't do? They don't put live weapons on them.
Right.
Because even a pilot admitted this.
Yeah.
We're professional, but Murphy's Law,
yeah,
weird things happen, right?
Exactly.
They're not going to risk it. Pilots aren't going to shoot each other down, but they're not going to risk it, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting to me that these things pop up when the planes aren't armed.
Right.
Because anyone can get lucky on any day. I mean, they're moving too fast for a fighter plane to shoot it down, except when they do.
Yeah.
Right? Except when shit gets real and it happens. So I would be interested to see how many times this happens when these, out in international waters or whatever, when planes are armed.
Yeah.
Combat patrols.
Right.
These days, because if it never happens then it tells me that either the aliens are kind of afraid of us,
right,
and they're cautious,
right,
or the tech people that are testing our new super classified, supersonic, anti-gravity planes don't want to risk us actually shooting one down, but they want to test them against other planes.
Right. Right.
But you're not going to tell a pilot.
No.
I'm not going to say, hey, listen, because this is so classified, brother, your top secret ain't going to do it. Ain't even high enough.
Right.
We're going to go out today. We're going to do some maneuvers, and if you guys might actually encounter some type of aerial vehicles that can stop on a dime and go 90 degrees, and they travel about Mach 75, and just, it's just training mission. Don't shoot at any of them.
Right.
No, that's not the way it's going to happen. They're just going to pop these things up on training evolutions where they know there's no accidental chance whatsoever of somebody firing on these things.
Right.
So, not saying that's what's going on. All I'm saying is the Pentagon's acknowledge that they're real.
Yeah.
You can believe they're aliens, or you can believe they're ours.
Well, the other thing you have to curiously notice is if they were aliens, then you would get duplicated sightings from our enemies and from other sources.
But we don't know that wouldn't be classified.
I understand that, but you know what I mean? And we generally don't, isn't it convenient that we generally don't have that either? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, in Independence Day, the things show up all over the world at the same time. Everybody sees them.
For a mass invasion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, or even in the movie Signs, you know what I mean?
The movie what?
Signs. And
Signs.
Signs. You know, it's a phenomenon that happens where it's weirdly simultaneously happening in multiple different places at the same time, which is, you know, I'll believe one stray one or a whole bunch of them.
Yeah.
But not many stray ones.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if you had, you know, one UFO show up because it got lost or it was just doing a flyby or, you know, it wasn't even interested in us.
That's real shit right there.
I mean, yeah.